Alrighty, Junior Lab Rats, surface water, lesson 9. So, a little bit about the water cycle. I'm sure you guys know what the water cycle is by now, but I'm just going to have a quick little video for you in a second here that will give you some more detail in a nice condensed format. I said condensed, there you go. So just remember that another word for the water cycle is the hydrological system. And of course, you remember when you see Rico there, that is something you need to engrave in your little brain for eternity. Keep it forever. It's important for life. Not just that the water cycle is called the hydrological system, but also the various components of the water cycle. Sometime today. There we go.
All the water on Earth today, every drop, is all the water there has ever been on the planet. Fresh water is actually millions of years old, the same water flowing in a continuous loop, falling as rain and snow from clouds to the Earth's surface, running in rivers, pooling in ponds, flowing from faucets, irrigating crops, traveling through plants, generating power, eventually evaporating into the air and condensing into clouds again.
Why is there life on Earth? And the reason there's life on Earth is because Earth has this perfect water cycle.
The water cycle. So simple, even small children understand the basics. Yet so complex, the most advanced Earth scientists, hydrologists, geologists, and biogeochemists are studying every part and process.
The water cycle is fascinating. It's something that's around us all the time, and yet we don't really understand it.
How to summarize what is known about the water cycle? With 2 words, flows and stores. The water cycle is a series of flows of water between various water stores or storages. Clouds in the atmosphere.
There's always a little bit of water in the atmosphere. We talk about relative humidity. It's a humid day, it's a dry day. Either way, there's water, sometimes a little, sometimes a lot.
There's a lot of water in the ocean, 70% of all the water on Earth. In the ice sheets and glaciers, 2/3 of all the fresh water on Earth. In the snowpacks atop mountains like the Sierra Nevada. In the Great Lakes, in rivers and streams, in reservoirs and watersheds, in wetlands, in the soil, in and on plants and trees rooted in the soil, and beneath the soil, in water tables and underground aquifers like the Ogallala High Plains, which runs underneath parts of 8 states from South Dakota to Texas. All this storage is temporary. Water in all its forms is always in flux and always moving. And there is a name for every kind of movement in the water cycle, starting with precipitation.
Precipitation is the process of water falling onto the surface of the Earth. You can have precipitation in many forms: rain, snow, hail.
Rain is falling water in liquid form. Snow, ice, hail, and sleet are falling water in solid or frozen form. Fog and mist, falling water in gas or vapor form. Precipitation that falls directly onto the oceans becomes part of surface ocean and can be churned by wave and wind action into ocean currents. Rain and snow that falls directly on rivers and streams becomes one part of stream flow. Rain that falls onto land takes a different path to the river, as does the snow and ice that falls and collects on mountaintops when temperatures warm.
When snow melts, some of it runs through the snowpack, then goes into small streams, tributaries that feed into large rivers.
What about that precipitation that falls on and over land? Some is intercepted by vegetation, plants, and trees.
Like you might imagine someone in the game of football intercepting a pass. These are raindrops trying to come to the ground, and the leaves on the tree intercept them before they hit the ground.
And the precipitation that does hit the ground, it can run off if the ground is hardscape, covered with asphalt or concrete, or if the soil is too wet or saturated to absorb more water, like an over-soaked sponge. Otherwise, precipitation infiltrates the soil surface, percolates into the ground.
Think of it as the water percolating through your coffee grounds in the morning. Gravity continues to pull it downwards where it will move through
Through the topsoil, into spaces between soil and rock particles, down to bedrock and further into fractures, into deep underground aquifers. Even groundwater here is moving sideways or laterally, discharging toward a river, lake, or the sea. Generally, the deeper the flow, the slower the flow.
Some of that fractured water might take a very long time, thousands to millions of years to get out.
And how does water get back out into the atmosphere? It evaporates, is turned from a liquid into a gas or vapor by the heat of the sun.
If you put a bit of water into a bowl and you set it outside on a sunny day, it's going to disappear. It's still water, it's just in the form of a gas rather than the form of liquid.
Water evaporates from every wet surface, even from wet air. Some rain and snow evaporates into the air while falling. Water evaporates through our respiration and perspiration, and from plants through transpiration. Trans means through or across. Plant roots draw up groundwater.
And plants pull that water up through their stems into their leaves and then release it back out through evapotranspiration.
Evapotranspiration, a spelling bee-worthy term for evaporation from soil and water surfaces, plus transpiration from plants. Evaporated water molecules are tiny enough to flow into the air. Mixed with smoke and dirt particles in the atmosphere, cool, condense into visible masses of water vapor, clouds. Winds move clouds into colder air. Water droplets collide and merge, grow bigger and heavier until they are so heavy they fall again. Rain or snow, sleet or hail. Precipitation, collection, runoff, interception, infiltration, percolation, discharge, transpiration, evaporation, condensation. The water cycle.
So the process by which water moves from the Earth's surface to the atmosphere and back again is called the water cycle. We just did this. Water that falls to Earth is called precipitation and can occur in the form of rain, hail, sleet, or snow. So when water condenses in the air, it forms clouds. The energy source for the water cycle is the sun. And this is something else to commit to your brain forever. Engrave it for eternity. Important stuff to remember. So let's talk a little bit about the distribution of Earth's water. Just really quickly, most lakes contain fresh water, some are salt, but most of Earth's fresh water is held in icebergs. A quarter of this is fresh water for Earth is actually underground or groundwater. And oceans cover more surface area than land. So let's talk about surface area. So when we talk about stream systems, these are networks that collect the fresh water runoff from the land around them and carry it to the ocean. And you have tributaries. These are the smaller streams or creeks that lead into a larger stream or a river basin. The lower area they call the basin, and the entire area is called the watershed. And right here you see a divide. The highest peak around the border of a particular watershed is the divide, and it's what divides one watershed from another. And the tributaries on one side of a divide will feed into one stream or river system, and the tributaries on the other side will drain into another. So a tributary is a river or a stream flowing into a larger river or lake. It can be lakes too, not just streams. So again, under stream systems, again, these are networks that collect freshwater runoff from the land and carry it to the ocean. And Watersheds, as I said previously, is all land that drains into a stream system. So right along where this red line is where you would find the divide between one watershed and another. And this is also important to commit to your memory forever, engrave it for eternity. And this is because one day you'll likely own some property, and it would be important for you to understand if you are part of a particular watershed, how close you are to any tributary. For example, here at our house, we are part of the Chattahoochee River watershed, and we are in fact very close to the Chattahoochee River. We're on the banks. So anything we do here, especially with soil or the trees and other vegetation in the area, can certainly impact the river, and that can impact the living organisms that are in the river or depend on the river. So we talked about this a second ago. A divide is the high area that separates one watershed from another. Sometimes they're also called watershed boundaries, and you probably saw that right here in the diagram. A river and all of its tributaries is what we call a river system. And this was in your notes, which of the rivers shown are tributaries, and that would be the Ohio River. It is a tribute, and the Missouri River. Those are both tributaries of the Mississippi River. They feed into it. So the river system is the Mississippi River system. So let's talk about ponds. Ponds are bodies of fresh water collected in low-lying depressions. So ponds can sustain all sorts of life forms, different types of fish, different types of vegetation. And not only can those living organisms live inside the pond, they may just depend on the pond as a water source. Lakes. So your lake is a large body, deep body of fresh water, and your sunlight doesn't reach the bottom. So with your pond, the difference is going to be that your sunlight can reach the bottom, and a lake, it cannot. So people like to think lakes are big and ponds are small, and that's not really what makes them different.
There are a lot of misconceptions when it comes to calling a body of water either a lake or a pond. I'd say that the majority of people just think that if the body of water is big, then it's a lake. And if it is small, then it's a pond. But that is not always true because it's not actually based on size. It's more so based on whether or not the photic zone spans the entire depth of the body of water. The photic zone is the layer of water that sunlight can penetrate through. So say you are fishing on an inland body of water, okay? And it's not a wetland, it's not a marshland, it's either a lake or a pond. If the sunlight can reach the bottom of that body of water at any depth, anywhere in that body of water, then it is a pond. It doesn't matter if it's a mile wide. If the photic zone spans the entire depth of it, then it's a pond. If the sunlight can't reach the bottom at any given part, then it has an aphotic zone, which is just the layer of water that sunlight can't reach. It's called an aphotic zone, the opposite of photic zone. It could only be 20 yards across, but if it has an aphotic zone, then it is a lake. Other than depth, water clarity also influences how deep sunlight can reach. If a pond gets a bunch of carp into it, okay, and they muck up the water, they make it really dirty because they're rooting around on the bottom, stirring up the mud and the dirt, and the water gets really dirty, and it makes it so that the sunlight can't reach the bottom of it anymore. Well, then it would technically be a lake now, since it has an aphotic zone. And that's all there really is to it. If you learned something new today, then consider liking the video. It will help my channel grow, and I would appreciate it. Subscribe to my channel if you would like to, and thank you for watching.
I like this dude keeps flashing back to the frog in that kind of droning voice because it sounds to me like the frog's talking. It makes me
See ya.
giggle. Wetlands. All right. So what are wetlands here? Freshwater wetlands are any land that is covered with water for a part of the year, and they tend to serve as a filtration system for water, and they're often protected for preservation. And they are often part of a wildlife preservation area because the wetlands, as it says, they provide filtration for water, and they also support some very important life forms in a particular ecosystem. And if you don't keep that balance in the ecosystem, you can have certain things can kind of grow out of control. You can have population blooms of the wrong types of species. So they're very important that we maintain wetlands. So we have three different kinds. We have some that are fed by streams and deltas, and these are called marshes. And we have others that are near streams and are full of vegetation, and these are our swamps. And then lastly, we have our bogs, and these receive water from precipitation. They're a low-lying area. And if you look at the picture of the bog there, you can see that it was probably once much wider, and then it has filled in with some sediment. Very often, that's the vegetation that grows in the water in those kind of wider ponds at first, and then that pond kind of it fills up with the vegetation as the vegetation starts to die, and that kind of creates this sediment that is sometimes referred to peat. Sometimes you'll see peat moss. That'll grow in those areas as well. So you have marshes, swamps, and bogs. So we're going to talk a little bit about America's largest and most important wetlands, and this would be the Florida Everglades. So here's some little fun facts for these next couple slides. So the Everglades are one of the largest wetlands in the world, but they used to be even larger than they are today. So only 200 years ago, it was called a river of grass, and it flowed slowly across nearly 1/3 of Florida, the state of Florida, covering approximately 3 million acres. That's huge when you try to think about it. Like picture the state of Florida and imagine 1/3 of it covered in wetlands. Today, however, less than half of the historic Everglades ecosystem remains, and that's due to decades of draining the wetlands, reclaiming land for agriculture and urban development. The remaining 50% include the Everglades National Park and Florida Bay, and they've been cut off from this lake. I'm going to say it wrong, I'm sure, but it's Okeechobee. I don't know. I need to learn that one. And is no longer receiving enough clean, fresh water. So the largest remaining subtropical wilderness left in North America is the Florida Everglades. The Everglades is situated between temperate North America and the tropical Caribbean. This subtropical environment, which is what you call something that's a little less than tropical, so it's a little north of the tropical zone and almost to our temperate zone. So since it's in between there, it's right in between, it's subtropical. This subtropical environment is home to plants and animals from both climates and is the ideal location for a diverse array of habitats. 9 distinct types of ecosystems have been identified within the Everglades National Park, including cypress, freshwater marl prairie, freshwater slough, coastal lowlands, mangrove, pinelands, hardwood hammock, marine, and estuarine. The Everglades are composed of the largest contiguous stand of protected mangroves in the northern hemisphere. Now, mangroves are these trees that tend to grow along the banks of certain bodies of water, usually rivers, and they have these roots that reach down into the water, but the tree itself, like the trunk of the tree and everything, is up out of the water. So it's almost like you would imagine a tree's roots behave in the soil, but they do it partly in the air and partly in the water. Mangrove forests are found in coastal channels and rivers within South Florida. Red mangroves with stilt-like roots, as well as black and white mangroves, thrive in the tidal waters of the park where fresh water from the Everglades mixes with salt water. You call fresh and salt water that is mixed together, you call that brackish water, by the way. These mangroves are protected within the boundaries of the park. The mangroves in the Everglades National Park are vital habitat and nursery for a wide array, wow, that's a tongue twister, now I'm stuck, of important marine species such as wading birds and fish like the red drum, spotted sea trout, as well as endangered and threatened species. Mangroves help maintain water quality as well as filtering pollutants and trapping sediment. These mangroves are also essential to humans as they protect the surrounding communities against the powerful winds and storm surges of hurricanes. Mangroves also prevent erosion by establishing sediment with their complex root systems. The Everglades are home to some unique, rare, and endangered species. Some of the unique species found in the Everglades include the Florida panther, American crocodile, West Indian manatee, wood stork, and snailkite. Seven of the listed species in the Everglades National Park are currently considered to be extirpated, meaning they are no longer present in the park. And two of the species, the Cape Sable seaside sparrow and the Florida leafwing butterfly, are only found in the park and its adjacent lands. One species in particular, the elusive Florida panther, is a rare and unique sight in the Everglades. The Florida panther is the last subspecies of puma still found in eastern United States. It was once almost extinct, with only a dozen adults estimated in the wild, and the Everglades National Park is one of few places you can see the now recovering population of approximately 120 to 130 Florida panthers. So it's kind of weird to think about big cats in North America, but we do have big cats. We have mountain lions and these Florida panthers, and they're basically all the subspecies of puma. That's what we have here in the U.S. The Everglades is also the only place in the world where American alligators and American crocodiles coexist in the wild. Really, any alligators and crocodiles, I believe. Crocodiles are typically saltwater critters. They live in saltwater habitats, and alligators are mainly found in freshwater marshes and in lakes. In the U.S., there are more than 3 million alligators. Oh, what a thought. But fewer than 2,000 crocodiles. The American crocodile can only be found in the southernmost tip of Florida, whereas American alligators are found across Florida, Louisiana, as well as in Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, North and South Carolina, Texas, Oklahoma, and Arkansas. So the Everglades have become invaded by Burmese pythons. Okay, how in the world does this happen? Well, the Burmese python is a non-venomous snake. It's a constrictor, and it's native to the jungles and marshes of Southeast Asia. So pythons were imported from Southeast Asia by the tens of thousands for the exotic pet trade. And some of them escaped as pets and established a breeding population in Florida by the mid-1990s. So it's illegal to import or purchase Burmese pythons in Florida now, but this species has already wreaked havoc on the state. Today, tens of thousands of pythons cover parts of Florida, including the Everglades National Park and Big Cypress National Preserve, and they're spreading. So people purchase these guys as exotic pets, and for whatever reason, didn't take good care of them, didn't keep their enclosure shut, who knows, but they got loose and enough of them met up that there's a breeding population and they just keep spreading. And these are huge snakes, so probably would be a heck of a surprise on your nature trail walk through Florida. So they're also filled with dozens of species of mosquitoes. That shouldn't be a surprise, but they don't all snack on humans. There are an estimated 3,500 mosquito species worldwide, and 200 of these species live in the U.S. At least 43 different species of mosquitoes are found in the Everglades National Park, and 13 of these bite people. That's enough for me. In 2017, a study by the University of Florida collected mosquitoes in the Everglades and analyzed what species they had bitten. Their research found that humans and small mammals like raccoon, possums, and deer were not the main targets of the sampled mosquitoes. Rather, they determined that the collected mosquitoes took 77% of their blood meals, from the hispid cotton rat, whereas a 1979 study found that the sampled population of mosquitoes took only 15% of their blood meals from this same hispid cotton rat. So researchers have attributed this change in diet to the Burmese python, as this snake is eating the other small mammals that the mosquitoes typically feed on. This change in diet to the hispid cotton rat raises concerns because the rat is the only known host of the Everglades virus, which, if it's spread to humans, can cause inflammation of the brain. So what this means is the rat is a host of this virus, which means it carries it around, but it's probably not causing too many symptoms or concerns for the rat. But if these mosquitoes are biting rats at a much greater rate and taking their blood meals from them, and then the same mosquito that bites one of these rats that may have this virus, that may be hosting this virus, and then it follows up by biting a human, it could transfer the virus from the rat to the human. And while this particular virus doesn't appear to be all that dangerous to the rats, it can be very dangerous to the humans. Responsible for supplying more than 8 million people with water. So 1 out of every 3 Floridians relies on the Everglades for their drinking water supply. Water from the Everglades National Park drains into Biscayne Aquifer, which supplies drinking water for Dade, Broward, and Palm County communities. Without the Everglades to recharge this aquifer, it would run dry or become contaminated by salt water, leaving millions of people without water. And that's the end. Hope you guys have a good one. Catch you later.